pretending you're not tired. George Foreman stayed on his feet between rounds while the other fighter sat down to recover. He kept his posture steady and gave the opposite corner no obvious sign of fatigue. It's the first boxing mind game we are covering. Most boxers use every second of the break. They sit, breathe deeply, and let the corner work. Staying on your feet creates a different picture, even if both fighters are equally tired. Foreman already made opponents work during the rounds by leaning on them, walking them backward, and forcing them to carry his weight in the clinches. When the bell rang, they could look across and still see him standing. The same tactic appears in MMA too. Here is John Jones explaining it.
You'll never see me like this in a fight. Never. I'm always like this.
Bernard Hopkins had his own version of this against Jean Pascal in May 2011. Just before the 7th round, the 46-year-old Hopkins dropped to the canvas and started doing push-ups near his corner. Pascal was 18 years younger and expected to have the better engine late. Instead, he had to watch Hopkins spend part of the break exercising after 6 hard rounds. Hopkins kept pressing through the second half of the fight and won a unanimous decision, becoming the oldest boxer at that time to win a major world title. Feint of Doom. Sergey Kovalev had a body feint so exaggerated that fans called it the crotch feint of doom. He would dip low and drive his hips forward, creating the threat of a punch to the body before deciding whether to attack. Nathan Cleverly saw it repeatedly during their August 2013 title fight. Kovalev entered at 21-0 with 1 draw and 19 knockouts, so any sudden movement toward the body demanded a reaction. Cleverly had to decide whether to lower his guard, hold his position, or risk being caught by a real punch. The strange motion gave Kovalev information without requiring him to commit. If Cleverly reacted low, Kovalev knew the head could be exposed. If he stayed upright, the body remained available. Kovalev could also feint again, making Cleverly process another threat while giving away nothing himself. The movement was effective because it came from a dangerous puncher. An exaggerated feint from someone without power might be ignored. Kovalev had already stopped 19 professional opponents, which made even an unusual hip movement difficult to dismiss. Kovalev overwhelmed Cleverly once the real punches began. He scored 2 knockdowns in the 3rd round and forced the stoppage 29 seconds into the 4th. The feint cannot be credited for the finish by itself, but it added another threat Cleverly had to read while dealing with Kovalev's jab, right hand, and pressure. Talking during the fight. Floyd Mayweather Jr. would talk to his opponent, and even the announcers, in the middle of the fight.
This is one of the things that Floyd does best, by the way, is psychological warfare.
I do that.
Against Andre Berto in September 2015, he slipped shots, answered back, and kept talking while Berto tried to force his way into range. The timing made the taunts harder to ignore. Mayweather often spoke after Berto had reached with a punch or failed to trap him near the ropes. Berto had already lost the exchange. Now Mayweather was calling attention to it before the next one started. By the later rounds, the talking had become part of the fight. Referee Kenny Bayless briefly stepped between them in round 10 and told both men to stop. Berto later admitted that pride pulled him into the verbal exchange. Mayweather also played to the crowd and carried his hands low while Berto kept pressing. The words matched everything else he was doing. He looked relaxed, Berto looked frustrated, and every miss gave Mayweather another chance to remind him who was in control. The numbers backed up the performance. Mayweather landed 232 of 410 punches. Berto landed only 83 of 495. Mayweather won a wide unanimous decision. The stare. Mike Tyson would lock onto an opponent and barely blink. At the stare-down with Peter McNeely in August 1995, Tyson stood almost motionless while McNeely leaned forward and tried to match him. The stare had become part of Tyson's image long before that fight. He kept his face still, fixed his eyes on the other man, and gave away almost nothing. No smile, no shouting, no visible nerves. McNeely was the one moving more. He leaned closer, tightened his expression, and tried to meet Tyson's intensity. Tyson stayed in the same position and let the silence do the work. His reputation made the stare harder to dismiss. Opponents had already watched him carry that same expression into quick knockouts, so the face-off came with years of violent footage behind it. McNeely still followed his usual plan when the bell rang. He charged forward immediately and tried to turn the fight into a brawl. Tyson dropped him twice before 90 seconds had passed. After the second knockdown, McNeely's manager entered the ring and stopped the fight, which led to a disqualification. The stare did not decide the result, but it gave Tyson a psychological weapon before any punches were thrown. Smiling after getting hit. Gennady Golovkin smiled in the middle of a hard exchange with Canelo Alvarez. During the fifth round of their September 2017 fight, both men landed, and Golovkin answered Canelo's return shot with a grin before stepping forward again. The smile changed the feel of the exchange. Canelo had landed clean, but Golovkin gave him no visible sign that the punch had shifted the momentum. He stayed composed, reset behind the jab, and continued pressing. That is why smiling after getting hit can work as a mind game. The puncher expects some kind of reaction. A step back, a clinch, a change in expression. Instead, he gets a smile and sees the same pressure coming back at him. Golovkin did not lose control, trying to prove the shot had no effect. He kept his balance, stayed behind his jab, and forced Canelo to keep moving. Canelo still landed some of the cleaner counters in the fight, especially when Golovkin came forward in straight lines. Golovkin kept advancing through the middle rounds and continued making him work for space. The smile did not erase the punch. It made the moment harder for Canelo to enjoy. He had landed, but Golovkin was still standing in front of him, ready to start the next exchange. Personal taunts. Antonio Tarver had already pushed Roy Jones Jr. through 12 difficult rounds once. Before their May 2004 rematch, much of the discussion centered on whether Jones had struggled because of the weight he lost after moving back down from heavyweight. Tarver waited until the final instructions to make it personal. "You got any excuses tonight, Roy?" The timing made the question hit harder. Jones had no room to answer properly, dismiss it, or turn it back on Tarver. The bell was seconds away. Jones had won their first meeting by majority decision, but Tarver believed he had done enough to win. His question dragged every argument from that fight into the ring one last time. The opening round was cautious. Jones worked behind the jab while Tarver stayed patient and watched for the right hand. In round two, Jones stepped forward and threw it. Tarver timed the shot and fired a counter left over the top. Jones went down hard and could not beat the count. The official result was a second-round TKO at 141. Jones had never been stopped before, and Tarver became the first boxer to knock him out, being ice cold. Naoya Inoue suffered the first knockdown of his professional career in front of about 55,000 people. Luis Neri caught him with a left hook in the first round of their May 2024 fight, but Inoue rose calmly, took the count, and went straight back to work. He did not rush to prove the knockdown meant nothing. Inoue tightened his defense, watched Neri's entries, and waited for another wide attack. The answer came in round two. Neri stepped forward again, and Inoue met him with a short left hook that sent him to the canvas. By the fourth round, Inoue looked comfortable enough to taunt him. He tapped his chin and invited Neri forward, turning the biggest scare of the night into a challenge. Inoue kept taking control. He dropped Neri again in the fifth, then finished him with a right hand in the sixth. Being ice cold is not about showing no emotion at all. It is about staying clear enough to make the right decision after something goes wrong. Inoue had just been dropped for the first time in his career. Less than 5 rounds later, Neri was the one lying on the canvas for the third time. Ignoring the entrance. Chris Eubank built his ring entrances to take over the arena before the fight even started. Before facing Steve Collins in March 1995, he went through the same theatrical routine that had become part of his identity. Collins refused to watch. He stayed seated in his corner with headphones on while Eubank made his entrance. The music played, the crowd reacted, and Collins gave him no attention. The headphones were part of a larger psychological plan. Collins had spent the build-up claiming that a hypnotist had trained him to feel no fear and ignore pain. Eubank openly complained about the hypnosis story and appeared unsettled by it. Collins later admitted that the angle had been designed to get into Eubank's head. Ignoring the entrance followed the same plan. Eubank could control the arena, but Collins would not let him control where his attention went. Once the fight started, Collins kept his composure through a difficult 12 rounds. He dropped Eubank in the 8th, then had to recover after Eubank dropped him in the 10th. Collins won a unanimous decision and handed Eubank the first loss of his professional career. Clowning. Emmanuel Augustus would dance after making an opponent miss, smile in front of him, then throw from the same loose movement. The clowning made it difficult to separate the performance from the attack. The movement hid real technique. Augustus could sway outside a punch, shift his weight back into position, and fire from an angle that did not look available a second earlier. His hands might be low, but his balance usually stayed underneath him. He rarely stayed on one rhythm for long. Augustus might bounce loosely for several seconds, suddenly plant his feet for a combination, then return to dancing before the counter came back. The next attack did not arrive on the same beat as the last one. Floyd Mayweather Jr. dealt with that style in October 2000. Augustus entered at 22 wins, 16 losses, and 4 draws, but the record gave no warning of how awkward the fight would be. He changed levels, switched directions, and kept attacking from unusual positions, while Mayweather adjusted to the shifting rhythm. Mayweather stopped him in the 9th round after Augustus's corner entered the ring. Afterward, Mayweather called him the toughest opponent he had faced, and said his record did not reflect how good he really was. Inviting the punch. Ricardo Mayorga lowered his hands and offered Felix Trinidad a free shot at his chin. During their October 2004 fight, he stood in front of one of boxing's hardest punchers and let him throw several left hooks without trying to block them. The crowd erupted when Mayorga stayed upright. For a moment, the taunt made Trinidad's power look ordinary. Mayorga wanted to show that he could take the punch and keep coming. He smiled, gestured for more, and turned a dangerous exchange into a challenge. The risk was that Trinidad now knew exactly where Mayorga would be. A fighter who invites punches gives up defense, balance, and the element of surprise all at once. Mayorga kept fighting aggressively, but Trinidad began finding cleaner openings. He worked the body, forced Mayorga backward, and started landing combinations once the pressure slowed. By the 8th round, the taunt had lost its effect. Trinidad dropped Mayorga 3 times and forced the stoppage.